They had labeled this ground as finished. It was mapped, logged, and abandoned years ago. Everyone walked away believing there was nothing left to find. And that's exactly why what Kevin Beets just uncovered is shaking the entire gold rush world. This wasn't luck. It wasn't a deep channel hit. It was a hidden bench layer sitting right where everyone was told to stop looking. Engineers now estimate it could hold up to $110 million in raw gold. Historic records missed it. Modern models ignored it. And a single decision turned the entire season upside down. What makes this discovery so dangerous isn't just the value. It's what it proves about ground people think they already understand. If this bench exists here, how many others were written off the same way? Once you see how this layer stayed hidden, you'll understand why this discovery changes far more than just one season. Before things get even crazier, make sure to like and subscribe, because what Kevin uncovers here rewrites everything we thought we knew about this ground. For years, this cut was treated like a ghost. People walked past it, dismissed it, and marked it as worked out on every historic map that mattered. Old-timers all said the same thing: nothing left worth chasing. Modern crews trusted the ink, trusted the records, trusted the idea that if gold had been there, someone would have already taken it. That assumption became the most dangerous mistake on the entire claim. Kevin didn't see dead ground. He saw a contradiction. Standing at the edge of the cut, the first thing that bothered him wasn't the lack of color, it was the shape. The bench height didn't make sense. Glacial flow in this region leaves clear signatures: stepped erosion, predictable tapering, uniform drop-offs. This bench followed none of those rules. It sat too clean, too level, as if it had been spared while everything around it was chewed away. At first glance, it looked ordinary. But the longer Kevin studied it, the more it felt shaped by time, not erased by it. Then the stakes appeared. Not modern survey markers, old ones. Half-rotted, iron-spiked, barely visible until erosion exposed their tops. They weren't random. They were aligned, deliberate. Someone had once taken the time to mark this exact elevation, then walked away without explanation. That alone should have raised alarms decades ago. Instead, it was buried under assumptions. On paper, the engineers weren't convinced. The material above the bench looked like classic overburden. Low yield, high cost, low priority. Every model said the same thing: move on. Kevin pushed for density readings anyway. Quietly. Casually. That's when the numbers stopped making sense. The readings came back heavier than projected. Not slightly heavier, but heavy enough to break the model entirely. Overburden doesn't behave like that. Not consistently. Not across a flat plane. Kevin didn't argue. He didn't pitch a theory. He ordered one test scrape. Just one. Enough to prove the idea or kill it for good. The bucket dropped. Steel teeth cut in and immediately went deeper than expected. No chatter. No hollow collapse. Just solid resistance. Dense, compacted material where loose gravel should have been. Then the bucket came up heavy. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just heavier than it should have been. The kind of weight operators feel before they see anything. When the load hit the ground, someone spotted color. Not a flash, not a tease. Real gold. Thick enough to silence the radios, and the location made no sense. This wasn't deep gold. It wasn't a tailings mistake. This was elevation gold, exactly where it wasn't supposed to exist. The material went to the wash plant, and that's where the math completely collapsed. Recovery jumped. Not as a lucky spike, but as a sustained shift. The mats loaded faster than they should have. The gold wasn't fine or scattered. It was even, consistent, distributed. Like it had been sealed in place instead of churned through chaos. Kevin didn't call it a streak. He didn't call it a pocket. Those words didn't fit. This wasn't gold that wandered into position. This was gold that stayed. A preserved layer, and that realization changes everything. Preserved layers don't survive by accident. They survive because something stops the system above them from breaking through. Floods, silt, collapse, time. When that happens, gold doesn't migrate. It waits. Kevin went back to the records, not the clean summaries, but the old material. Handwritten logs, partial surveys, missing pages, and buried between equipment notes and fuel tallies was a gap, a clean break in extraction history. No explanation. Just a sudden stop, followed by a note in a different hand. Unstable ground, no follow-up, no remediation, no return. When engineers overlaid modern scans with survey lines drawn nearly 80 years earlier, the alignment was impossible to ignore. The bench sat just above known flood lines, high enough to avoid erosion, low enough to trap everything heavy. A natural vault, perfectly protected, perfectly hidden, and for reasons no one fully documented, deliberately avoided. That's when the question stopped being geological and started being human. You don't walk away from ground like this unless something forces you to. Safety concerns, technology limits, fear of collapse without the ability to stabilize it. Whatever stopped them back then didn't remove the gold. It sealed it, and Kevin was standing on top of it. The first test scrape wasn't a fluke. The second confirmed it. The third erased all doubt. This bench wasn't random. It extended laterally. Same height, same density, same recovery. Every pass of the bucket peeled back another piece of the same impossible story. Gold, where it was never supposed to survive, let alone thrive. No one said it out loud yet, but everyone felt it. This wasn't leftover gold. This was untouched gold. The kind that doesn't get smaller or weaker with exposure. The kind that rewrites valuations and makes engineers uneasy because it refuses to obey the rules they depend on. And once that reality set in, Kevin didn't slow down. He didn't dig deeper. He dug wider, opening the face and exposing more of the bench, knowing that every meter revealed only raised the stakes. Ground like this can't be half recognized. The moment it's acknowledged, it demands an explanation. That's when the engineers stopped calling it unusual and started calling it wrong. The composition didn't fit any regional model they'd trusted for decades. The gravel was too compact. The layering was too clean. The transitions were too sharp. This area should have told a story of chaos, flood scatter, broken strata, hydraulic scars left behind by violent movement. Instead, it looked intentional, like material placed carefully and sealed where it landed. No turbulence, no reworking. Just weight stacked on weight, exactly where it fell. What disturbed them most wasn't the location of the gold, but its behavior. Normally, as you move sideways across a bench, gold gets smaller. The heavy pieces drop early. Fine gold travels farther, then everything fades out. That's the rule. Here, the opposite was happening. The more they opened the face, the heavier the gold became. Pieces that should have been trapped early were showing up deeper into the layer. That doesn't happen unless the system was never disturbed. There were no signs of hydraulic violence, no scouring, no channeling, no pressure-driven movement. The layer hadn't been sorted by water. It hadn't been broken apart by freeze-thaw cycles. It hadn't been touched. Finally, one engineer said what everyone else was already thinking. This bench shouldn't exist naturally. Not here. Not like this. Not intact. That's when the first real estimate was whispered. Not written down, not announced, just quietly spoken between two people staring at the same numbers. 8 figures, and rising. Kevin didn't slow down. He pushed harder. As the bench opened further, the equipment began to feel it. Buckets dragged, hydraulics strained. Steel complained in ways experienced operators recognize instantly. This wasn't loose pay gravel. It was compacted, compressed, almost cemented by time. Every pass demanded more power, more precision, more focus. The machines could handle it, but they were working near their limits. The crew noticed the walls first, hairline fractures where none should be, subtle shifts in shadow along the face. This bench wasn't just holding gold, it was holding pressure. Concern crackled over the radio. Not panic, but caution. They'd seen walls fail before, And this kind of ground doesn't give second warnings. Kevin reran the numbers, slope angles, load distribution, stress lines. He recalculated everything in real time, adjusting the cut as the bench revealed itself. What worked yesterday no longer worked today. Each new meter of exposure changed the balance. He tightened angles, widened setbacks, and traded speed for control. On paper, it looked conservative. In reality, it was a gamble. Then Kevin committed fully. Instead of carefully nibbling at the bench, he ordered the face opened end to end. No half measures, no selective cuts. He wanted the entire layer exposed, visible and understood. The decision carried real risk. If the wall failed, the season could end instantly. If the bench destabilized, everything below it would become untouchable. But hesitation now meant risking the true scale of what they were standing on. As the dig accelerated, so did the gold. Nuggets began appearing mixed with fine gold, something that shouldn't happen in a disturbed system. Large pieces don't normally coexist cleanly with fines, unless the material has never been reworked. The mats began clogging faster than anyone had ever seen on this site. Cleanup times stretched longer. Weigh-ins climbed higher. No one pretended this was normal anymore. Purity tests came back strong, stronger than regional averages. Fewer impurities, less alloy contamination. This gold hadn't traveled far. It hadn't mixed. It stayed where it formed, protected by everything above it. That realization forced another model revision, then another. Each one pushed projected yields higher, stretching numbers that already felt uncomfortable to say out loud. Engineers ran volume calculations across the exposed face. Lateral continuity, depth consistency, density retention. Every variable pointed to the same conclusion. This wasn't a localized anomaly. It was a continuous bench system, extending farther than initial scans suggested. The gold wasn't thinning, it was holding. Someone finally said the number. $110 million. Not projected revenue. Raw value in the ground. Conservative assumptions. No speculation. Just math applied to material that was never supposed to exist. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Movements became sharper. Conversations more deliberate. Every decision now carried a dollar figure big enough to make or end careers. Kevin showed no outward reaction. He kept pushing the cut forward, methodical, controlled, knowing the margin between discovery and disaster had narrowed to almost nothing, and the bench kept delivering. The gold kept getting heavier. As the ground finally told its full story, the reason it stayed hidden became impossible to ignore. This bench sat above where miners are trained to look. Conventional logic says gold follows depth. You go down. You chase the channel. You push until bedrock gives you answers. Elevation is usually written off as waste unless proven otherwise. The old miners weren't wrong. They were efficient for their time. They followed gravity, followed water, followed the deepest signals because that's where gold usually concentrates. And while they chased depth, this gold weighted higher. The flood events that should have destroyed a layer like this ended up preserving it instead. Each surge dropped compacted silt and overburden across the bench, sealing it before hydraulic forces could tear it apart. Weight piled on top. Pressure locked it in place. What should have caused erosion became armor. By the time technology advanced enough to detect subtle anomalies, the models were already set, and no one thought to question them. Modern miners trusted the models completely. Software replaced instinct. Maps replaced memory. If the data said the gold was gone, the ground didn't get a second look. This bench existed in the blind spot between old habits and modern certainty. It wasn't deep enough to matter, and it wasn't shallow enough to notice. So it waited. Kevin didn't trust the model. He trusted the ground. As the bench opened further, a new problem emerged, and it had nothing to do with gold. Structurally, this layer wasn't just rich, it was critical. The bench acted like a load-bearing shelf, spreading the weight of the overburden above across the cuts below. It had been doing that for decades, quietly stabilizing everything underneath. Removing it didn't just expose gold, it removed support. The first warnings came from the lower cuts, small sloughs, subtle shifts. Nothing dramatic, but enough to trigger concern among the engineers. Stress lines began appearing where none had existed before. The mine's geometry was changing faster than anyone expected. This bench wasn't just hiding value, it was holding the entire structure together. Engineers ran failure simulations, and the results were unmistakable. Strip the bench too aggressively, and the lower walls could cascade. One failure would trigger another, a chain reaction capable of burying equipment, blocking access routes, and shutting the operation down entirely. Now, the gold wasn't the only thing at risk. Kevin stood at the edge of the cut, staring at numbers that refused to compromise. Speed meant exposure. Exposure meant instability. Slowing down improved safety, but risked losing the bench to weather, freeze-thaw cycles, or regulatory shutdowns. If conditions turned, there would be no clean option, only trade-offs. Kevin chose neither speed nor hesitation. He chose control. Mid-operation, the entire mine plan was rewritten. Cut angles changed. Extraction sequences reversed. Support zones were left intact longer than planned. Instead of stripping the entire face, Kevin ordered selective removal, carving the bench in a way that redistributed load as material came out. It was slower, riskier in the short term, but it kept the mine standing. The redesign cost time and money, but it bought stability, and almost immediately, the gold responded. 1 week's totals eclipsed what the site used to produce in an entire month. The numbers didn't just rise, they exploded. Cleanups became events. Scales struggled to keep up. The math stopped being theoretical and became unavoidable. This wasn't a lucky streak. It was sustained, repeatable output. Crew morale flipped overnight. Long hours felt different when every bucket confirmed the decision was right. Operators pushed harder, knowing each load carried real weight. Maintenance crews worked around the clock as wear accelerated. Nothing rested. Everything moved. Bearings ran hot. Hydraulics screamed. Steel showed fatigue. Still, no one slowed down. The ground was giving, and no one wanted to be the reason it stopped. Engineers expanded their scans beyond the original cut. The results confirmed what Kevin already suspected. The layer continued laterally, stretching well past the active zone. Same elevation, same density, same gold behavior. This wasn't an isolated bench. It was a coherent system, preserved and untouched by time. That realization reframed the entire season. Plans built around incremental gains collapsed under the weight of this discovery. Targets were rewritten, priorities shifted. The operation stopped chasing gold and started managing it. The bench didn't just change output, it changed how every decision was made. What was once marginal became central. What was once dismissed became the backbone of the operation. From that point on, everything flowed from this layer. How fast they moved, where they cut, and how much risk they were willing to accept. The season no longer hinged on luck, weather, or equipment failure. It hinged on one question: whether the bench would hold together long enough to reveal what it had been hiding. That reality landed in front of Tony. He didn't react the way anyone expected. No outburst, no loud skepticism. He took the data, spread it out, and went quiet. The silence stretched longer than anyone in the room liked. Tony studied the numbers the same way he studied ground, slowly, deliberately, searching for what didn't belong. Production curves, recovery rates, slope adjustments, old maps he'd seen 100 times before. The longer he looked, the clearer it became. This bench hadn't been missed by accident. It had been dismissed by habit. Tony asked a single question, not accusing, not defensive. Why was this ever written off? No one answered right away. The truth hung heavy in the air. It was dismissed because it didn't match expectations, because it sat above the chase zone, because generations of logic said elevation was waste unless proven otherwise. Tony leaned back, eyes narrowing, and something clicked. Old Beets family stories, Half-remembered warnings about false high ground, about benches that fooled men into thinking they were empty, suddenly aligned with what Kevin had uncovered. Knowledge passed down verbally, never formalized, never mapped, quietly lost as methods modernized. Tony said it plainly. Kevin had seen something he hadn't. That admission changed everything. This wasn't approval anymore. It was respect. Not inherited. Earned. Kevin hadn't just found gold, he'd broken a pattern Tony himself had followed for decades. Tony understood exactly how rare that was, but respect doesn't stop time. The clock was already working against them. Forecasts began shifting. Early cold fronts, unstable weather patterns, the kind that turn workable ground into locked ground overnight. Freeze-thaw cycles don't just slow operations, they destroy benches like this. Expansion fractures grow. Collapse risks multiply. And suddenly, time became the most dangerous variable of all. If winter catches this bench half exposed, it won't survive. It will crack, slump, and collapse, burying the very gold it protected for decades. From that point on, every hour becomes a calculation. Not theoretical value, but real dollars weighed against real risk. Do they slow down to protect the structure and lose weeks of access? Or do they push harder and gamble that the ground holds long enough to recover what truly matters? Kevin feels the pressure from every direction. Crew safety, equipment limits, weather windows shrinking by the day. He chooses to accelerate. Extraction schedules tighten. Shifts run longer. Redundancies disappear. Machines cycle non-stop, pulled out for maintenance only long enough to keep them alive. Risk rises with every bucket, but hesitation now would cost more than boldness. Kevin adjusts angles again, cutting the bench in tightly controlled sections, balancing speed against stability with no margin for error. One misjudged cut, one missed fracture, one sudden weather shift. Any of it could bury the bench for good. The crew feels it. Conversations quiet. Movements sharpen. Everyone knows they're working inside a window that's closing fast. This isn't routine mining anymore. It's recovery under pressure. The kind that defines careers or ends them. And still, the gold keeps coming. Cleanups stack back to back. Weigh-ins stretch late into the night. The numbers don't shock anyone anymore. They confirm. What started as an anomaly has completely rewritten the value of the claim. Zones once marked as secondary now outrank the primary cuts. Long-term projections triple, then settle even higher. The $110 million estimate starts to feel cautious, almost conservative. Engineers begin revisiting other parts of the property with new eyes. Similar elevations, similar flood histories, similar dismissals buried in old records. An uncomfortable conclusion takes shape. This bench might not be unique. It may be the first clear example of something much larger. Layers ignored not because they lacked gold, but because they challenged expectation. Kevin didn't out-experience anyone. He out-listened. He read the ground instead of the model. He trusted physical truth over inherited certainty. That distinction matters more than anyone wants to admit. Tony sees it now. Clearly, this isn't just a strong season. It's a turning point. Proof that even ground mined for generations still holds blind spots. Proof that intuition, when paired with discipline, can outperform experience that's hardened into habit. As the bench continues to deliver, the operation begins to shift. It's no longer just about extraction. It's about preserving opportunity. Decisions are made not only for this season, but for everything that comes next. How remaining layers are protected. How future strategies are adjusted. How ground like this is never dismissed again. Yes, the gold matters. Yes, the numbers matter. But what this discovery leaves behind is heavier than either. A new baseline. A reminder that the most valuable ground isn't always buried the deepest. Sometimes it's the ground no one thought to question. And Kevin Beets is no longer just the one running the cut. He's the one who changed how the ground will be read from here on. Please subscribe to the Timefold channel and don't forget to like.